In this video, we're going to take a look at how to use the SwiftLoop tool to create the computer. Alright, so on the drone there's this little computer piece, this little box-shaped thing, and there are some details on it that we want to pull out of that, and I'm going to show you how to quickly create something using the SwiftLoop tool instead of Ring and Connect. So let's go ahead and create the box, and we're going to go to Geometry, Standard Primitives, and then Box, and I'm going to use the box creation method. Let's go to our front view. And I'm just going to left click and drag out this box right about here. And then don't forget the height. Pull that up and then we'll just leave that the way it is. Now on this, I'm going to set this to about 20 and well, actually let's do 22 by 22 on this. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the hierarchy panel, effect pivot only, and center that to the object, and then turn off effect pivot only, and then zero out the X and the Y. Now once we've done that, this should be centered up on the bracket. We might have to do a little bit of modifications on the size of that because it is hanging off that bracket a little bit too much. So I'm going to do 21 on each one instead. That should give us what we need. And you know what? Actually, let's do this. Let's back that up on 20 to 22 on each one, and then right click, convert it to editable poly, and then let's go to vertex mode, because whenever we start messing with the box parameters and adjusting the length and width, once we've already centered it up, it will add length to one side but not the other. So let's go ahead and scale it in the X and Y direction, and I'm just scaling that in to where it's fitting right on top of that bracket. Alright, great. So now that we have that, let's go ahead and go to Edit and SwiftLoop. Now this is under the modeling ribbon, and if you hover over these tools, it will give you some pro tips. Okay, now these tips are basically talking about the different keyboard shortcuts that you can use for them. So if you hold down Shift, what it will do is it will create a loop in the center, and it will follow the flow of the surrounding surfaces. If we hold down Control on that, it will allow you to automatically activate edge subobject level, so we can actually select the edges doing this. And then we hold down Alt. This will slide the edge of the loop between its boundings. So any loops that are above it or below it or to the side, it will allow us to slide along that. And then we have Control Alt, which is really great because what it does is it straightens out that loop. And then holding down Control Shift will actually remove that loop. Now we'll talk a little bit about how to use this, and we'll really get into it with some more complex shapes. But for now, let's just use it at its default. So what I want to do is I want to add the little detail right here along the front. There's a little square across the front of this, and what I want to do is just create a loop here, and then there, and there. So really quickly, we're able to add 4 loops just by clicking on those points. Let's go ahead and select that polygon. We're going to inset this, and so I'm going to use the inset tool, and let's inset it at a value of 0.1. Go ahead and hit OK on that, and then we're going to select this polygon, hold down Shift, and then select the next one in that loop, so it will select all the way through, and then let's use the extrude settings. Now in this case we want to do -0.2, and then hit OK. Alright, perfect. Now let's go ahead and do this one more time. I want to add a little bit of a piece or a panel right up here at the top. So looking at this, let's use Edit SwiftLoop, and I'm going to add it here. And then I also need to add a segment right across the top here. So I just want these polygons, and what I want to do is I want to inset those. So let's inset, and we'll do 0.1, and then we're going to take those sets of edges and we're going to extrude those in. Now when we do this, what it's going to do is it's going to extrude them by group. What I want to do is I want to extrude by local normal, so that way it pushes straight back and then down. Alright, perfect. So now we have that, and then I want one more little piece in here. Got a little lost. Let's hit Z so that way we can back up in there. We might also want to isolate this just to make it a lot easier to work with. And then I'm going to add a loop. Let's find it here, Edit SwiftLoop. Let's add one here and then here. And what this is going to do is it's just going to allow me to add a little panel for my wires for underneath this. Now, one of these loops, I'm not really happy with the placement. I accidentally placed it down. So let's grab the Swift Loop tool again. Now let's hold down Shift and Alt, or Control and Alt, excuse me, and let's left click and drag that edge and just get it where we want it. Okay, so a really cool way to do that. Now, if you want to be able to grab this loop, you'll notice it's not allowing me to do anything. It's because it will only allow you to move the loop that is currently selected. So let me double click on this loop, go to Edit Swift Loop, hold down Control Alt, and then you can move that one. Okay, so a little bit of a caveat with that one. Now we could, if we wanted to select a different loop, remember we can hold down Control and then select that. So I could select this one and that one, so that way we don't have to back out from that. So now that we have these loops selected and we have them in place, let's go ahead and go to polygon mode by hitting 4 on the keyboard and select this polygon right here. Now I still had the loop or the Swift Loop tool on, so let's right click and hit Control Z. Then let's select that polygon and we're going to use Inset, and then we're going to extrude this straight down, and then I'm going to inset it one more time, and then I'm going to extrude it up. This time I'm going to do 0.5. There we go. And then we'll inset that. And then we will extrude it down. And we're going to do -0.5. There we go. So now I've got this little piece where my wires will clip into. And we have something that looks kind of like a computer here. Now, I also want to show you another tool. And this is called the chamfer tool. And what chamfer is going to allow you to do is to remove any hard edges. Basically what it does is it takes the edges you have selected and splits them into a certain amount of edges that you specify in the tool. So let's go to edge mode, hitting 2 on the keyboard, and I'm going to double click on this loop and then all the way around the top, and let's make sure that we get all of those. Let's do the same thing across the bottom. There we go, and then get the corners, because I want to soften those as well. And there we go. So now with all of those corners selected, let's go ahead and use chamfer. So I'm going to bring up the settings here, and you'll see that it's chamfering a lot, and it's really messing up the model. So I'm going to take it all the way down to 0 and then bump it up just a little bit. Let's do something like maybe 0.2. And then I'm going to switch it from this triangle chamfer to quad chamfer, and then what it does is it makes these nice neat quads. Now with this we have this tension value, and if we lower that, it will actually round out those corners, so it makes something really nice like this. Now I can add multiple segments to this to really smooth it out if I want to do that, but in this case I'm going to go ahead and leave it at 1. I think it's okay with that. Let's go ahead and hit OK on that, and we've smoothed out all of those corners, and it's nice and round, and it looks pretty good. So now that we have our computer piece in there, let's go ahead and turn off isolation mode, and then now that's sitting in there, and all we have to do now is build in some of the gyro pieces that allow it to spin and move, and then we also need to add in the wires. So we'll go ahead and we'll do that in our next lesson, but before I do that, I'm starting to get a little annoyed with all the colors that we've got going on here. Typically, whenever I'm modeling, a lot of bright colors like this starts to mess with my eyes, especially once I've been modeling for several hours. So what I like to do is go ahead and just select everything in the scene, and then go to the color and change it to black. Now this would be really hard to work with and model, so what I like to do is go ahead and add a standard material to this, and I'm just going to drag in a standard gray material. Double click on that and then just assign it to your model, and then now we have this nice neat gray model that we can start working with, and it's going to be much easier on the eyes. So now that we've done that, let's go ahead and move on into our next video.